We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed.
Did you really go out with an alien? Uh-huh. What was it like? Real different.
Becoming Human, a Mork and Mindy podcast. Previously on Becoming Human.
Mork, there's only two ways to propose. B, the old-fashioned way. You charge into our life on a fiery white stallion. Toss the tomato on the back of the saddle and ride off into the sunset.
I guess the old-fashioned way is always best.
Marry?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Marry my daughter?
Oh, yes. Thank you for your blessing.
Blessing? I'll give you a blessing.
You wouldn't have a man standing behind a woman wearing glasses, would you?
Married.
You know, I think that we three should have a talk right now. Come
Okay.
I don't think we should neglect Mindy like this.
Honey, come on.
Hi, Dad.
You know, Pops, wherever Mindy goes, I go, because basically we're a unit, right? Okay, but since we're almost family, I can make one exception.
Honey, it's your decision. And we just want you to be realistic. And sometimes that's the hardest thing in the world.
You know, I always thought my life would be like a Doris Day movie, not Barbarella. How do I weigh what I feel against what I know is logical?
Honey, I think you know exactly what has to be done.
There's another of the nighttime exteriors of the house, and Mork is at the bedroom door. Watching it today, the first time through, I was like, has he just been standing there by the door all this time? And Fred and Cora and Mindy are just going back and forth all this. But then he has the line, Mindy, you've been in there all night. So you've got to assume a few hours have passed. Maybe she got home from work 6 o'clock. Could have been later. Fred and Cora eventually said their say, and they went home. And Mindy didn't come out of the room. So he now asks if she's going to come out. And she says yes, meaning yes, she's going to come out of the room. And he gets really excited because he takes the yes as yes to his proposal. And then she comes out in her yellow robe, so we know that she went to bed and was probably trying to sleep and couldn't. He hugs her and shouts incoherently.
Me. Oh, yes, me. Look.
It's a beautiful ring. Look at the jewels. They're sparkling.
Uh-huh.
They're glittering. They're moving.
Those are some lies. He's blinking.
Him? It's a lie?
Yep. Oh, don't do that. You'll give him whiplash. See, the nice thing about it is if you drop it, he'll follow you home.
You might think, well, how can Mork afford an engagement ring? And then we find out, because he's Mork, that the ring is sentient and male. Some kind of creature that is ring-shaped. And this is what he gives her. And she's flattered and then a little weirded out. She hands it back to him and says it's a very nice ring, but she can't accept it. They head over to the couch, and she reluctantly tells him that it's not about the ring. She gestures that he should sit on the couch, so he gestures back, and this goes back and forth, and then they sit down.
Seymour, sometimes in life, no matter how much you dream or you wish for something, it just can't be. I guess what I'm really trying to say is, I can't marry you.
Sure, man, it's a joke, right? Like the volunteer army? Rejection. Okay. You don't want to be Mrs. Mork? Min. But, Min, you give me one reason why we can't get married, bicker, and learn to play canasta for the rest of our lives.
I can't lie to you. And it really hurts me to have to say this. But it's because you're an alien.
And?
And that's it. Don't you see, we're from two completely different worlds.
Oh, Min, that never affected, like, Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier. I mean, or Pocahontas and John Smith, or Mickey Rooney and Pick a Number. I mean, Min, come on, Min, I'm not going to give up. No way, like Luke. I'm stuck on you.
Oh, come on. Deep down inside, you know there's probably a barrier that shouldn't be crossed.
Yeah, but you said you love me, you know. Love me. You know, L-O-V.
Oh, I said that and I meant it, but I'm sorry, my mind is made up.
It's interesting how Robin Williams plays this because there's a sense that he does know the truth. He knows that there are barriers, but he wants to ignore them. He just won't admit that his being an alien is a barrier. And we can see how hard this is for both of them in this scene and later, because they do care so deeply about each other. Although, in some ways, my sympathies are more with her now, I do feel for Mork as well, because he loves her so much, and he wants to marry her. He wants to honor what he told the spirit of her mother in the previous episode. There's a reference to the volunteer army, and I don't remember the history on this, but I think they got rid of the draft in maybe 73, and then they were relying more on volunteers, but it was kind of an awkward shift to that. We get some references to various couples, like Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier. Grace Kelly would actually die 11 months after this episode aired. Pocahontas and John Smith, and Mickey Rooney and Pick a Number, because Mickey Rooney had been married so many times, and often to people that you wouldn't expect, like Ava Gardner. Mork says he doesn't understand. It's not clear how much he does. Despite the angst of all this, there's definitely still some humor, and he spells love as L-O-V-V. He says that she took more time to make up her mind about her bathroom wallpaper, and I thought that was odd because it didn't look like there was wallpaper in the bathroom. It was blue paint, but maybe on a wall that we couldn't see. Or maybe she made up her mind that she didn't want wallpaper, she wanted paint. He says he means more to her than that, doesn't he? She comes back from the bedroom and says he does. He wants her to take some time to think it over, just 24 hours. So the span of this episode is pretty short. He begs her, and then it turns into a song about the word please. And he kisses her hand, which would be very sweet and romantic, but it also felt kind of desperate. She reluctantly says all right. He says it's 11:59 now. Maybe Fred and Cora came over 6 or 7, and then hours have passed, and now it's 11:59 p.m. Mork says that because he likes what she stands for, even when she's sitting, and I couldn't tell if that was like a suggestive line or just a pun, and then he chucks her under the chin. He says he'll give her the extra minute and make it midnight tomorrow night. She will have the remaining minute and all of tomorrow to think about whether she wants to marry Mork. They lightly touch hands, and she says all right, but she can't promise anything. So she had said she can't marry him, but it's not that easy. She is willing to think it over, to see his side as well as Fred and Cora's, but she can't promise anything. They say goodnight, and he reminds her that she changed her mind about the wallpaper, and she sort of rolls her eyes and walks away. And then, this is presumably later that night, Mindy is lying on her side in bed, and she's wearing light blue pajamas. Mork enters her darkened bedroom, and he's dressed kind of like he was when he broke Peter Pan out, like all in black, including his sneakers. He creeps along the room, and then he drops to the floor and crawls over to her nightstand. He places a tape recorder next to her black push-button phone, and we'll see the tape recorder again in a later scene. He presses play on the recorder. The recording has his voice saying, "Mork promo, take one," which I thought was funny because it's like a promo for the next episode of the series or something. But this is more like a brainwashing tape. It says, "You will marry Mork. You love Mork. Mork loves you." Yes, Mindy knows that they love each other, but she's not so sure about marrying him. Mindy wakes up maybe at the sound of the door closing, and she hears the recording say that Mork is great. He's a today kind of guy. And that felt very much like late 70s phrasing. She turns off the tape and kind of shakes her head. We get the usual sunny but snow-covered shot of the TV station. So I think they just went to some TV station in Boulder or the vicinity, filmed for like a minute, and then they have used it every time we have a scene where Mindy is at the TV station. Mindy is wearing tan slacks, a high-collared white blouse, and a striped blazer. She has her hair in a bun on top of her head. She's sitting at a small gray table with a darker gray typewriter on it, and there are some files on the side. She's obviously working. It'll turn out she's working pretty late, and Jake tells her to lock up when she leaves. Presumably the station's off for the night. It's always unclear how late they broadcast, and maybe it's different on different nights. And it's such a small station that she can just lock up when she leaves. She stops typing and calls out to him as he's about to walk through the door on stage left, and that door has a little window. We can see part of the Wake Up Boulder sign, so I thought that was a nice touch. I didn't see the tons of ferns and other plants that we saw so much of in season 3. He turns and goes back to her. He has his jacket folded over his arm. She wants to have a heart-to-heart talk with him because they haven't had one in a while. He says they've never had one. And that feels canonical. I mean, unless they were having them off screen, they've never really said anything personal to each other. She guesses that they're overdue. She says she has a really important decision she has to make in about 2 hours. So this is about 10 o'clock. Logically, she knows what the answer should be. Emotionally, she feels exactly the opposite. She says he's been around for a while and asks what he would do. I thought that was interesting. She gets the advice of her elderly grandmother, and then she turns to her elderly coworker for his perspective, and she asks, do you think with your head or with your heart?
Mindy, a lot of people think of me as just old Jake the cameraman, that I care about nothing except staying in focus and going home early. They think I don't care about anybody else's problems because nobody cares about mine. Well, you know something? They're right.
Never did like old Jake.
This is the penultimate appearance of Pat Cranshaw as Jake Loomis, and it's pretty much consistent with the little that we knew about him in the previous season, including that we're never really going to know much about him, and he prefers it that way. We see that he just doesn't want to talk about himself, and he figures nobody cares and he doesn't care about them. And it sounds kind of cruel, but he's not obligated to spill his guts. It's different than the relationship that Mindy had with Dr. Lincoln in Mindy and Mork. She says she never did like him. I think that's just some of her bitterness in this episode. They didn't have like an antagonistic friendship or relationship before.
What are you doing?
Come in. I'm coming to sweep you off your feet.
Oh, my God.
Here, Min, get ready for it. Here we go. Whoa! Big lunch, Min?
This is ridiculous.
No, it's not. It's romantic. We're going to ride off into the sunset.
The sun set 4 hours ago.
Well, I guess we better haul it then. That's all right, Min. I'll catch the next one.
Exodore had suggested that Mork get a fiery white stallion, so his interpretation of that is to get a white pony. He wants to ride off into the sunset with her, and it would be very romantic, but he can't lift her, and it's not quite fat-shaming, but makes a remark about her weight. She says that the sun set about 4 hours ago, so I figured that would have been around 6. Maybe this is late summer, early fall. This part of the scene is basically about the sight gag. And she just rides off, somehow out of the studio, I guess. We'll find out from the next scene that he did catch up with her. And, of course, he is in this very exaggerated Western costume. I vaguely remember that it was pretty exciting to have a live horse in the episode. This is a very going all out kind of episode. That was fun to see in the studio. So this is where my other anecdote comes in. These scenes obviously took some time to set up, although many of them are set in Mork Mindy's living room. When you go to see a TV show, at least at that time, there would be a warm-up guy. I mean, I suppose now there's some women doing it. And this would most often be somebody who worked on the show in some capacity, a writer or otherwise, but not necessarily. They would sometimes allow for audience questions. Here I was, Mork and Mindy superfan to some degree, seen the show, watched every episode. I'm happy the Fred and Cora are back, and I got to see Exodore, so that was fun. But there was one character that appeared in season 3 that is notably absent, and it wasn't Glenda Faye because I never liked her. I asked what happened to Bebo. The warm-up guy said we turned him into Mork's chaps, the shaggy, furry things he's wearing around his legs for the cowboy costume, and Robin Williams looks sheepish. It was interesting reaction because he could have just riffed on it. I wasn't a little kid, but I was a kid. And I think I just said, oh, because it was funny, but it was just so cruel. Kudos to Robin Williams for not weirding me out further. So it didn't directly interact with him, but I think that said something about me, about Robin Williams, and about the warm-up guy. But yeah, R.I.P. Bebo. I think that it was just one of these gimmicks, like putting a dog in a show. And they decided it didn't fit the revamped, because Mork and Mindy revamped every year, but it didn't fit what they wanted to do in season 4. But they certainly could have had Bebo. Would have been interesting to see Bebo and Mirth together. But I think also Mork doesn't have anybody that he confides in this episode except for Exodore. Bebo could have been his sounding board, as he sometimes was in season 3. That has stayed with me. That is my most vivid memory of seeing the show. No, I don't remember Pam Dauber reacting to it. They come back in. There's no exterior, but it presumably would have been a nighttime exterior, and the apartment is dark. It's obviously a bit less than 2 hours since the previous scene. We can actually see a little bit of the house across the way through the window, and their window is on. So they're staying up till almost midnight. And Mork and Mindy enter the front door in the outfits from the previous scene. That's why I think that question I had came in between those two scenes. We're very close to the end now. Mindy says that Mork really topped himself. And he says, I guess you've never ridden a pony through a car wash before. Boy, did he scamper when he hit that hot wax. So it's not that Robin Williams was totally against jokes about animal abuse, as we've seen with some of the lines about cats in the past. But yeah, so this is one of these things where there's an offstage visual image that we get. Unclear why they went to a car wash other than just for this joke. Mork takes off his hat and bets that she's never had a date like that with an Earthman. It's said kind of wistfully. It's not like, hey, I bet you never had a date like that. He's trying so hard. He knows that his being an alien is a barrier, but he's trying to show her what the perks are, I guess, of dating a spaceman. And of course, yes, she's never had a date like that. She admits that. She sets down her purse and says it's almost midnight. They should sit down and talk. I wish this episode did have more of them just simply sitting down and talking, because we did have that in Mindy and Mork and some other episodes where they get to process what's happened, come to an understanding. That's not quite what happens here. That is because of the path that Mork takes. I guess the path that the writers and director and producer took as well. He stutters and says there's still enough time for the grand finale, and she says she doesn't need a finale. Part of me agrees with her. She doesn't need a finale. What's about to happen is visually dazzling. It is very entertaining, but it's not quite what Mindy as a character needs. As he goes upstairs, he says she sure does need a finale and she'll love this. He tells her to please put the tape in the recorder, and those are sitting on the counter. She picks up the tape and says, this one marked last-ditch effort. Mork is very desperate. Pretty honest about it. He says that's it, and she laughs a little. So despite what she's going through, she is struck by the humor of all this. As she puts in the tape, she says he's given her flowers, perfume, and horses. And we didn't see him giving her perfume, but presumably that happened off screen. She asks what's left, and he says, Broadway! Hit it, Mind! She presses play, and the music starts.
Got my top hat, got my best dress, all I need now is a girl. Got my striped tie, got my hopes high, got the time and the place, and I've got rhythm. All I need now is the girl to go with. Hey, whoa. Well, boy, they really screwed this game up when they added the ball, man.
No.
You see, this guy's in love with you. Seriously, where are you from? Yes, I'm in love. What do I do to make you mine? No, tell me now. Is it so? Don't let me be the last to know, because I want to be happy and be happy tonight. Make you happy. I don't really know. Life really was when you are my baby, and I give some to you. You know it's true, baby.
So we get this show-stopping extravaganza, this performance, and it's different than in Reflections and Regrets, where Mork dances with Glenda Faye to cheer her up and remind her that dance is still a part of her. This is Mork using his charm to woo Mindy, try and win her over, charm her through entertainment. She is somewhat resistant, but she does give in. I just want to mention, he changes very quickly out of the cowboy costume into this Broadway costume. I was really appreciative that they did fork over the money for the music rights, because we need this segue. The lyrics matter. We have him going old school with top hat, and then that segues to This Guy's in Love with You. This was a hit song written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. The first version was released by Herb Alpert in 1968. There were some cover versions, including by women who change it to This Girl's in Love with You. It was definitely something that I would have heard growing up. Top Hat, all he really needs is the girl, and in this one, he is in love with her and wants her to see that. And then it segues to I Won't Be Happy. This feels very vaudevillian and even more old school than Top Hat. This is Mork being silly, but also he means it. He won't be happy unless she's happy. And yet, I'll talk about that. So it's this big production number with song and dance, and he's even making Vegas-y asides like, hey, where are you from? And some overhead shots. She is charmed despite herself. And at the end she says, oh, Mork. And he says, did I close out of town? That's like, did he have a musical that had an out-of-town tryout and then it didn't succeed and so it never made it to Broadway? So he's using that showbiz vocabulary to express that maybe he knows on some level that this didn't quite work. She says before she met him, the biggest choice she had to make was whether to have her hair permed or to fix the cat. And I don't know if that was related, like, oh, well, I only have enough money for a perm, or to take the cat to the vet. I think we've had references to Mindy having a cat before, but obviously it's been several years. She will get her hair permed this season, bit of a spoiler, and I had feelings about that at the time. We'll see what I think about it now. She says this is the hardest decision she's ever had to make. And I guess within the last 3 years that's true, and what we know of her life before then. She's made decisions that weren't easy, like going back to college. It was hard to do, but she really wanted to.
Well, maybe the decision's been made for you, Min. I mean, think about it. I crossed 5 galaxies and came to this little tiny planet, and of all those people in the world, you found me and we fell in love. Coincidence? I say nay. Maybe some infinite intelligence in this cosmos, as we peer out, realizes that we were meant to be married in all mankind.
I wish I could believe that.
I wish you could believe that too, Min. I'll send by Exeter to pick up my clothes.
Why? You don't have to go. I don't want you to go.
Well, you could go, but the lease is in your name.
Well, just because we can't be married doesn't mean we have to end our relationship. I mean, why can't we just go on being the way we are?
I love you. I couldn't stay here knowing that you'll never be mine.
But it doesn't have to be like that.
Well, if it were the other way around, could you stay?
No.
Big kiss. You know how easily you run down, so don't skip breakfast. And don't forget to take your fem iron. Okay.
Bye. Mark.
You don't want me to go, do you?
Want to read minds, too?
No. I can read your face.
Oh, Mark, if I married you, I'd be giving up any chance I might have to have a normal life. But if I lost you? Will you marry me?
What?
Will you marry me?
This is so sudden, I'll need some time.
In Reflections and Regrets, Mork talks about how he had to come so far to find a piece of himself, and that piece is Mindy, and here he had to cross 5 galaxies. He emphasizes that they fell in love. It's not just that he fell in love, but he knows that she fell in love with him. That is something that we didn't get in season 3. They loved each other, and there was still that small possibility that it was just all platonic, but intense in its own way. And this episode, it's really being put put in terms of romantic love. Mork is kind of an old-fashioned guy. He feels that if you love somebody that much, you should marry him. There's a Laverne and Shirley episode that would air a couple months after this. In it, Laverne moves in for just a few hours, as it turns out, with her boyfriend, who very emphatically does not believe in marriage. Her conflict is being a modern 60s kind of woman, but also having an old-fashioned side to her. And Lenny, who has a mostly unrequited crush on her throughout the series, and his own old-fashioned streak, tells her that if he loves somebody, really loved them, he would marry them. And yes, it is expressed in gender-neutral terms. That's sort of the way that Mork sees things. I'm not sure where that comes from exactly, because obviously Mork did not grow up in the earth 1950s. He doesn't have a Catholic background as Laverne and Lenny do. We know that he's very influenced by television, but I think what he has observed of marriage, including Fred's marriage with Kathy, has led him to believe that he loves Mindy so much and in this certain way that they have to be married. And we'll soon see that he can't back off from that now that he has made that leap and he has proposed to her multiple times. He can't back off from that. I'm not sure what celebrity Robin Williams is imitating. Logically, that probably should be Carl Sagan, but to me it actually sounded more like Ed Sullivan. Mork feels he has to move out, and he's going to send Exeter to pick up his clothes, which I thought was adding insult to injury, because Mindy doesn't like dealing with Exeter under the best of circumstances. But I guess he figures he's confided in Exeter. Exeter is a trusted friend, gosh knows why, so he's just going to send him to pick up the clothes. And I don't know where Mork was planning to go. Maybe he was going to stay with Exeter. And Mindy doesn't want Mork to go. He says, well, she can't go because the lease is in her name. And so this plays on the thing which came up in the last episode, where it's Mork and Mindy's apartment, but everybody calls it Mindy's apartment. And to some extent, Mork is still the roommate. Mindy very clearly wants to go on as they are. And like I said, she doesn't want to move quickly. She just wants to drift along. And he can't anymore. So that's that conflict. I guess, although they don't say this, the implication is that if Mindy met and fell in love with an Earthling, she could have that normal life. She'd have to give up Mork, probably even as a friend. Once she marries Mork, they're not going to get divorced, and she's shutting the door on other possibilities, and she's not ready to make that leap. They don't really discuss it, but it's possible Mindy just simply doesn't want to get married. Although in season 1 we meet her ex-fiance. So I think that she does believe in marriage. But I don't know that necessarily she was really ready now that she's just getting started on this career. I don't feel like Mindy is out there looking for someone else. She loves Mork. She loves living with him. But she doesn't necessarily want to put it in a marriage box. This is actually a little bit similar to the Three's Company spin-off / sequel, Three's a Crowd, where Jack falls in love, and of course he had fallen in love many times, but this time it was the real thing, and he wanted to marry his girlfriend, and she didn't want to get married because of her parents' bitter divorce. Mindy doesn't have that in her background. That's an example, also on ABC, of the man wanting to get married and the woman being reluctant or even resistant. He says he has to leave because he can't stay there knowing that she'll never be his. From his point of view, there's a belonging to each other, not in ownership, but just his in the sense of this is his wife, this is his life partner, and they can't be that to each other, and he doesn't want to settle for less anymore. I really do feel bad for both of them, more so Mindy because she's so conflicted, but you can definitely see that Mork is in pain. He doesn't want to go, and she doesn't want him to. We have the carryover from season 3 where he would say big kiss. He says big kiss, but it's actually a very gentle kiss on the forehead, and intentionally or not, this is a callback to the previous episode where he gave her the kiss that her mother would have given, and so it was a maternal kiss. This one obviously has different connotations, but he is still her friend. He is still her family. And that was one thing I didn't mention earlier, but when Fred and Cora shut Mork out, they were kind of drawing a line saying, we love Mork, we we think he's a lot of fun, but when it comes down to it, he's not really family. And that feels harsh, but we'll see how that evolves during season 4 as some unexpected things happen along the way. Mork, at least, even when he's leaving, he wants to say, I'm still connected to you. We can't be as connected as I want, but you are still a part of me. And it's very sweet that he worries about her running down, particularly now that she's got this somewhat stressful job. He wants her to remember to eat breakfast and take her fem iron. And apparently they still make this. It's a form of a tablet, and it's for women to prevent low blood levels of iron, such as those caused by anemia or pregnancy. Mork has this caring aspect, although kind of the humor of fem iron at the end. She wonders if he can read minds. There are definitely episodes, including this one, where Mork just is not reading her, or he's misunderstanding other people. But in this scene, he reads her face, and he knows what she's going through. And I think he's in denial in the episode because he wants this so much. But at some point, he has to say he's gone all out, he's done everything, and she won't say yes. She's still very conflicted, and she echoes what Cora said about giving up her chance of a normal life. But at the same time, she can't bear to lose him. So that's the conflict for her now. So given the choice between having an abnormal life with him and having a life completely without him, she's gonna choose marriage. And it's funny that marriage in this episode and in the next couple episodes after that is presented as an almost aberrant act. Not just from the Orkin perspective, but almost from the Earth perspective. And that's interesting given the timing of this in 1981, when the U.S. allegedly was going through a conservative shift because of the election of Ronald Reagan and the rise of the moral majority. There was definitely a mistrust of marriage carried over from the 60s. And it just kind of mutates in this episode where, because you're marrying a spaceman, it kind of is an odd lifestyle choice. And then we get her proposing to him. This makes me think of a later sitcom, Who's the Boss?, which was basically a 7-season ship tease. And then in season 8, Angela and Tony finally admit their feelings. And there have been things along the way where like, oh, I love you, but well, I don't exactly mean that. And, there are kind of like conditions put on. This was just, they're in the tunnel of love alone and they admit it. They're a couple in season 8. And then eventually Tony proposes to Angela and many things go wrong. She questions his motives about why he's proposing to her. It's very different. But in the end, Angela has to propose to Tony. And definitely that was a show of role reversal and gender roles built into the title and the whole concept of the show, where Tony is Angela's housekeeper. And that ran from 84 to 92, and also on ABC. So here, Mindy makes her choice, and then she has to ask Mork to marry her because he has proposed so much, and now she has to ask him. He says, this is so sudden. Tony plays it coy as well. Made me think of that. I like this scene a lot better because I have some issues with that episode, although there are things I really like about it as well. But then again, I have issues about this one that I will get into more. This ends, as that scene does, with a big hug and kiss, and the audience is very happy, and this audience, probably not including me because I couldn't whistle, but they whistle, as it's a very joyous thing. But there's this melancholy undertone because of the journey we took to get here. And then we get the tag. We didn't have a tag in the previous episode. It just ended with Mork and Mindy kissing. Their relationship kind of left up in the air, but kind of settled. So now we're back to Orson. Usually the tags are some sort of lesson that Mork has learned, and that is what he's there for. He's supposed to report on Earth. But this takes a different path. So we get another nighttime exterior of the house, and Mork summons Orson as usual, and he calls him your Battle of the Bulgeness, which is a World War II reference and a fat joke. And we get a little bit more of that because Orson says, do you always have to report when I'm eating? Mork says, well, sir, I would wait till you stop, but then Earth's sun does have a limited lifespan. You said the word limited again. And then Mork Bark laughs. It starts out, feels very typical, the fat joke and teasing and all that, and Orson being irritable. Orson says after that comment, Mork had better have an interesting report. And Mork says, well, sir, you're going to decorate me for this one, because to him, this is the most interesting thing that could happen. He says that he and Mindy have signed up for a full lifetime term term in the most noble of institutions, marriage. Mork thinks that Orson will be happy for him. Why, I don't know. It's not like Orson has ever particularly been a friend to him. And even Exeter was kind of indifferent. And he saw that Fred and Cora were not exactly welcoming him deeper into the family. And Orson says, what? Mork doesn't think about why this would make Orson angry. He says, do I detect a note of jealousy? Or are you coughing on a bone? Like he's choking while he's eating. And I wondered about the jealousy thing. Like, does he think that Orson is interested in him? Or is it that Orson never got married and he's jealous of that? But of course, there's a reason, many reasons, but one particular reason why Orson never got married.
Mork, no Orkin has entered into a marriage since our dark ages. You've broken one of our most fundamental Orkin laws. Correct the matter at once.
All right, sir. I'll correct the problem. I quit. I abdicate my post for the woman I love.
Mork, you can't abdicate. I'm giving you an order. Carry it out or else.
Oh, yeah? I'm marrying Mindy, and you just try and stop me. That's a nice try there, sir. Don't you understand, though? On Earth, when a man and a woman love each other...
Silence! Sir. The matter is closed. Until next week, Mork. Nanu.
Yeah, all right. Uh-huh. The old silent treatment, eh? I am staying right on this spot until you let me marry Mindy. I have patience. I can wait. I once sat through an entire Bobby Vinton concert.
So this introduces another conflict, and in fact, it will carry over, and that's why we get to be continued. Orson points out that marriage breaks Orkin laws. It is one of those things, along with emotions, that they left back in their more primitive times. This would be a very serious breaking of the law. Orson orders Mork to not do this. Mork has sometimes been afraid of Orson, but he loves Mindy so much, and he has grown and changed, so he stands up to him. And then there's a Bobby Vinton joke, and then Mork takes out the paddle and ball that he had in an earlier scene. He's just going to pass the time and wait. He thinks that he can outwait Orson, and of course that's not going to happen because Orson is very stubborn. And then we get the closing credits. Previously, the closing credits were usually scenes from the series, and this one, which other series would do, uses stills from this episode. So it's kind of a reminder of what this journey that we've gone through has taken us to and where we're leaving off. But yeah, most of the episodes in the series were obviously some 1-hour episodes, but in general, they were episodic. There might be callbacks, follow-ups, and so on, but things were resolved. This one resolves it in the sense that Mindy agrees to marry Mork, but then there's this complication. It's definitely not a typical character A proposes to character B episode, and definitely an example of how Mork and Mindy would take tropes but make them its own. Each of the Mork and Mindy seasons reinvents itself at the start. Like I said, I think they probably felt like at this point they were down the ratings, and also Mork and Mindy's relationship had evolved over time. Why not marry them off? And of course other series had made that decision as well, like I Dream of Jeannie and Get Smart. And that's always a tricky thing. Is that going to be a shark jump? I'll talk about this more as we get deeper into season 4, but it was definitely an intriguing idea to me then and now. What would it be like for Mork and Mindy to be married and to have that type of relationship? That's not what they ended up doing with season 4, I can just say right now, but that was the implication that was where this was going to go. For whatever reason, they shifted gears, just like they did with season 2, where it looked like that was going to go in a particular direction, and they rethought that. I realized when I finished up with season 3, I felt a sort of melancholy and a loss. That surprised me because I thought, well, I still have a season to go, but I would no longer have what this series was. Despite all its changes, it was a particular thing the first 3 seasons, and season 4 is something else. But it's also really intriguing to me. I am looking forward to seeing how I feel about all these episodes, particularly diving deeper into them than I ever have before. And obviously I have talked a lot about this 1.5-hour episode, and I'm still not done. I rate each episode in this series on a 0 0 to 4 egg scale, which measures how well it delivers what I'm looking for in the series. You would think Mork and Mindy getting married, or at least engaged, would be exactly what I want. And yet, the previous episode managed its tonal shifts really well. There were moments that were very funny, warm moments, even very dark moments. It was all real well done. This feels a little splintered to me. Some of the time it is characters having heart-to-heart talks like Mindy once with Jake, then it's sacrificed for a joke or a sight gag or this Broadway production number. I mean, it is cool to see this little white horse and Mork dancing up a storm and singing and all that. I mean, it is fun, but I'm not sure how well it blends in with things like the scene in Mindy's bedroom where her father and grandmother are talking her through the downsides to marrying Mork. It's a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth that Mindy can't joyfully accept Mork's proposal. This is just sort of like, well, given the two options, yeah, okay. It's kind of like Exeter has plan B and plan C, but what about A? On a 0 to 4 egg scale, I went back and forth on this. I am going to just settle with a 3. I think it is a good episode, but it just doesn't quite sit right with me. In some ways, I love it, and in other ways, I want it to be something else, and so that's hard. I also rate each of these episodes on a 0 to 4 heart scale. That measures how well it supports and promotes the romantic relationship of Mork and Mindy. And in a sense, that is all this episode is doing, is promoting it, particularly through Mork. Even though it's kind of iffy on them getting married, it is very much pro them being in love and spending their lives together. And that is big. And I'd given a 3.5 to the previous episode because although it wasn't centered on Mork and Mindy, in a sense the whole thing was about Mork and Mindy and the way it culminated in the last scene. But this one, people have opinions on Mork and Mindy and they don't all agree, and Mindy doesn't even know what she thinks. I would go a 3.5 out of 4 for this one too, because although it in some ways is putting the brakes on it and say, well, yes, they are adorable and wonderful and so sweet together, but at least it's having those conversations, and I like that. And even the things that are kind of eye candy or ear candy, like the horse, these are romantic gestures. It is really moving how Mork and Mindy feel about each other, and there is no question that they have this chemistry. A sensible girl like Mindy kind of has to give into her feelings because of this love. There's no question how Mork feels about Mindy. I mean, this is just all out there. And it's also hard to look at this episode in isolation because it is to be continued and it is part of what's come before as well. I definitely recommend the episode despite my qualms. And I will say that the acting is very good, both the serious and the more humorous moments. And even a very two-dimensional character like Jake, he's kind of happy being two-dimensional. That was one of the better Exeter Mork scenes. And of course, Conrad Janis and Elizabeth Kerr are just hitting all the right notes in their performances. Some really great acting for Pam Dauber, of course. Another tour de force episode for Robin Williams, a very different way than something like Mork's Mixed Emotions, or Mork versus the Necrotons for that matter. There's definitely some good stuff here. It's sort of the conflict between the emotions and the logic. The heart of the 13-year-old wants to say, give it a 4. 4 eggs, 4 hearts. The more sensible, life-weary 56-year-old has to say, yeah, but... We'll see where this goes. There are definitely some things that will play out. We will find that the reservations of Orson and Fred and Cora and Mindy and even Mork, for that matter Exeter, there is some merit to those reservations, and yet there are ways that they are completely wrong. And the thing is none of them prepared for. We will see where that goes next time. 3 eggs, 3.5 hearts. This is Paula Schaffner with episode 70, Limited Engagement. Thank you for listening to my side of this heart-to-heart talk.
It's a beautiful night. We're looking for something dumb to do. Is it the look in your eyes, or is it this dancing juice? Who cares, baby? I think I wanna marry you. Well, I know this little chapel on the boulevard we can go. No one will know. Oh, come on, girl. Who cares if we're trash? Got a pocket full of cash we can blow. Shots of Patrol, and it's on, girl. Don't say no, 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 no. Just say yeah, 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 yeah. And we'll go, 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 go. If you're ready, like I'm ready. 'Cause it's a beautiful night. We're looking for something dumb to do. Hey, baby, I think I wanna marry you. Is it the look in your eyes, or is it this dancing juice? Who cares, baby? I think I wanna marry you. Oh, I'll go get a ring, let the choir bells sing like ooh. So what you wanna do? Let's just run, girl. If we wake up and you wanna break up, that's cool. No, I won't blame you. It was fun, girl. Don't say no, 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 no. Just say yeah, 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 yeah. And we'll go, 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 go. If you're ready, like I'm ready. 'Cause it's a beautiful night. We're looking for something dumb to do. Hey, baby, I think I wanna marry you. Is it the look in your eyes, or is it this dancing juice? Who cares, baby? I think I wanna marry you. Just say I do. Tell me right now, baby. Tell me right now, baby. Baby, just say I do. Tell me right now, baby. Tell me right now, baby. Baby, oh, it's a beautiful night. We're looking for something dumb to do. Hey, baby, I think I wanna marry you. Is it the look in your eyes, or is it this dancing juice? Who cares, baby? I think I wanna marry you.